I was traveling out of state for work when I checked into a small budget hotel off the highway. It wasn't the kind of place I'd normally stay at. The carpet in the lobby was worn, the front desk worker barely looked up from her phone, and everything about it just felt off. But it was cheap, and I just needed a place to sleep. My room was on the 6th floor, at the very end of the hallway. I noticed right away that it felt different from the rest of the building. The hallway light above my door flickered constantly, and when I stepped inside, the room smelled faintly of mildew. Still, I was tired, so I unpacked, pulled the curtains closed, and lay down. That's when I noticed the curtains. They were ripped at the bottom, and the glass behind them looked scratched and old. The kind of scratches you'd expect on glass that's been there for decades. I told myself it didn't matter. Around 1 a.m., I was still awake, scrolling on my phone. The room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioner. That's when I heard it, a soft tapping at the window. At first, I ignored it. Maybe it was just the air conditioning rattling something loose. But then it came again. 3 distinct, deliberate knocks. I froze. My first thought was impossible. Someone was outside my window. But I was 6 stories up, and my window didn't have a balcony. There were no trees, no fire escape, nothing anyone could climb. I sat there listening, my phone dim in my hand, my eyes locked on the curtain. Then slowly, I thought I saw something move across the fabric. A faint, shifting shadow, like someone pacing back and forth outside the glass. The knocking stopped. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then I heard something worse. A sound like breathing. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, just faint enough for me to know it was real. A slow inhale, a long exhale, right against the glass. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. I reached for the hotel phone and whispered to the front desk that someone was outside my window. There was silence. Then the woman at the desk said something I'll never forget. "Sir, your room doesn't have a balcony, and no one is staying in the rooms next to you tonight." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. I turned my eyes back to the curtain. It was perfectly still. But then I saw it. A foggy patch spreading slowly across the glass. The kind of fog you leave when you breathe against cold glass. I dropped the phone and stumbled back. The fog patch faded. For the rest of the night, I sat awake in the chair in the corner, staring at the window, waiting. But nothing else happened. When the sun finally came up, I packed my things and left without even checking out. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but glance back at my old window. The curtain was closed. Still. But just as I looked away, I swear it shifted. Only for a second, like someone was standing there, watching me leave. It was a little past midnight when I left my friend's house. The drive back to my apartment should have taken just under 30 minutes. I remember checking the clock on the dashboard. 12:14 a.m. The roads were empty. No cars, no people. Just the soft hum of my engine and the faint glow of my headlights cutting through the dark. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed headlights appear in my rearview mirror. They were far back at first, but they didn't disappear. Mile after mile, the car stayed behind me. I changed lanes. They changed lanes. I slowed down. They slowed down. That's when the uneasiness began to creep in. The road I was on cut through long stretches of forest. No streetlights. No houses. Just the endless tree line. The headlights behind me stayed close. Closer than they needed to be. Uncomfortably close. I turned off at the next exit, hoping they'd keep going straight. But when I merged onto the new road, the headlights followed. Perfectly. Now my heart was pounding. I pulled into a gas station. It was closed. The parking lot was empty. I stopped the car and waited, pretending to check my phone. The headlights slowed down as they passed, but they didn't keep going. They pulled over right across the street. I sat frozen in my car, staring at the glow of those headlights. They didn't turn off. The car didn't move, just waited. After a few minutes, I started driving again, back onto the highway, and so did they. Every turn I made, every exit I took, they followed. By now, I was less than 5 minutes from my apartment, but the thought of letting them see where I lived terrified me. So I kept driving, circling the neighborhood, hoping they'd give up. Finally, I made a sudden sharp turn down a side road I knew well. A narrow lane, lined with trees, ending in a cul-de-sac. I killed my headlights halfway down and rolled to a stop. The night was silent. No cars, no engines, just crickets in the trees. For a moment, I thought I had lost them. But then, faint in the distance, I saw it. The glow of headlights, creeping slowly down the road. Closer, closer. I turned the key and floored it. My tires screeched as I tore out of the cul-de-sac, flying past them. When I finally reached the main road again, I checked my mirror. Empty. No headlights. No car. I drove home shaking, parking 2 streets away so they wouldn't see where I lived. I sprinted up the stairs, locked every door, and sat by the window until the sun came up. And just when I started to relax, at 6:03 a.m., I heard it, the sound of an engine, idling, right outside my apartment. It started when my family rented a house on the edge of town. It wasn't old enough to be historic, but not new either. The kind of place where the wood creaks at night and the air feels just a little too heavy. The landlord gave us a tour when we moved in. He walked us through the living room, the kitchen, and the bedrooms. But when we got to a door in the hallway, just beyond the kitchen, he stopped. He told us flatly, "The basement is off limits. Don't go down there." My dad laughed, thinking he meant it was just for storage. But the landlord didn't laugh back. He just repeated himself. "It's locked for a reason." The first week was uneventful. We settled in, unpacked boxes, adjusted to the quiet of the neighborhood. But at night, I'd sometimes hear faint noises. A dull, dragging sound from beneath the floorboards, like something shifting in the darkness below us. At first, I told myself it was the pipes. Old houses make noises. But then the scratching began. Slow, deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. It always came from the hallway, right outside that locked basement door. One night, just after 2 a.m., I heard it again. This time louder, closer. I stepped into the hall and froze. The basement door was trembling. Not violently, but enough that I could see the brass knob shivering. Something was pressing against it. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I had imagined it. But when I walked past the door, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Deep scratch marks in the wood, just above the knob. Like something had been clawing at it from the inside. The days dragged on. Every night, the noises got worse. Sometimes it sounded like whispering, muffled voices drifting up from the floor. Other times, it was a dull thump, over and over, like something slamming against the walls. I stopped sleeping. Every night, I sat up in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sounds to begin. And they always did. One night, I decided I had to prove to myself it was nothing. I crept into the hallway around 3 a.m. The air was freezing cold, like someone had left a window open in the middle of winter. I reached out and touched the basement door. It was ice, like touching metal in the snow. Then, I heard it, the sound of breathing. Not mine, not anyone else in the house. A slow, ragged inhale, and a rattling exhale, from the other side of the door. I stumbled back and nearly screamed. The breathing didn't stop. It followed me as I backed away, low and steady, until I shut myself in my room. The next day, I asked my parents if they'd ever heard the noises. They looked at me like I was crazy. They hadn't heard a thing. But I noticed the way they avoided looking at the basement door when they walked past it. Almost like they didn't want to acknowledge it at all. Weeks went by. The noises continued. But then something changed. Instead of scratching and whispers, it was knocking. 3 slow knocks. Always at 3:15 a.m. Every single night. 3 knocks and silence. Until one night, the knocks were followed by the sound of the lock turning. I sat up in bed and listened. The old brass knob twisted. Once. Twice. Then stopped. I waited, paralyzed with fear, until dawn broke through my window. The next morning, I crept into the hallway. The lock on the basement door was cracked. The screws holding it in place were bent. It had been forced from the inside. That night, I begged my parents to call the landlord. They did, reluctantly. When he showed up, I'll never forget the look on his face when he saw the door. He didn't say a word at first. Then finally, in a low voice, he said, "If the door opens, do not go inside. Whatever you hear, whatever you see, do not step past the threshold." And then he left. That was 2 nights ago. Last night, the scratching started again. But it wasn't coming from behind the door anymore. It was coming from inside the walls, following me, room to room. And tonight, I just heard the basement door open, the creak of its hinges echoing through the hall. It's 3:17 a.m. right now, and something is breathing at the foot of my bed.